I was just coming out here to set up my camera so I could start filming, and I turned on my camera to see if this was okay, and I really can't deal with myself right now, and so I just thought I would start filming. I don't really know why. I am so excited for this video, and I think I'm even more excited to start editing it, which is so weird because it's usually my least favorite part, and there are cops driving by, which is fitting for this video. Editing is usually my least favorite part, but I have so much footage from Alcatraz, and I'm so excited to watch it back, because I'm not kidding when I say this is probably one of the coolest things that I've ever done. I know that a lot of you really love the paranormal stuff, but I'm huge into like abandoned buildings, and I have a really strange fascination with prisons. Not even just abandoned prisons or haunted prisons, it's like just prison in general is like so fascinating to me. So this is right up my alley. If you couldn't tell from the title, I went to Alcatraz. I actually just got back from San Francisco this morning around 3 a.m. My flight got delayed last night, which was the worst thing in the entire world. I don't think I've ever had a flight delayed, and if I have, it has not been that bad. I was supposed to be home by 11. I really didn't get home till like 3:30. So that wasn't very fun, but the rest of the weekend was really amazing. We went to Alcatraz on Saturday, went with Brittany and Kayla, and we did the audio tour, which Brittany had actually done before. And I wasn't really sure how I wanted to make this video. I didn't want it to just be clips of Alcatraz with weird music playing on top of it. I'm like, that's gonna be the worst video. So I decided that I wanted to retell my favorite stories from the audio tour that we did, because it was probably like a 45-minute tour, and we heard a lot of shit. So I went through and I have about 6 pages of notes, you guys, like this shit's ridiculous. And this video is gonna be really different because I'm gonna tell you the stories, and I'm also gonna play the clips over top of it. So hopefully it'll feel a little bit like you're walking through it with me. So if you can't afford Alcatraz or you can't go just yet, at least you can experience it a tiny bit. I have footage of like every single room, every fucking doorway. I tried to record everything. And then after we did the whole audio tour and I recorded all my stuff, I made both of them walk through it with me again so I wasn't distracted by my camera or anything like that. I wanted to get the full experience with it, and when you're done with the tour, you're allowed to walk around as long as you want. Boats go back and forth between there and San Francisco every 15-30 minutes, and so we could pretty much stay there all night if we wanted to. Not really. I eventually want to do the night tour. If any of you have done it, please let me know how it was. It was crazy too because walking through there, I completely forgot for a little bit that it is haunted. It really doesn't feel that way. I think it mainly because there's like a million people walking through it with you, and it's during the day, and so I really want to do the night one so I can feel that haunted spookiness. But okay, we're gonna get started. I know that Alcatraz was used for more than just a prison, but that's gonna be what I'm focused on in this video, are the prison stories and all that stuff. I don't know how much of my face is actually going to be in this because I do have a lot of footage, but if I'm ever looking down, I'm reading, so I'm sorry. I wish I could just say it from my memory, but I really can't. I'm scared that I'm going to get things wrong, and I want this to be as accurate as possible. Also, I highly recommend the tour. If you guys were ever looking into it or you're trying to decide whether or not you should go, highly recommend it. The audio tour itself was really cool because you heard it through the voice of the officers who worked there, and then you also got to hear some of the prisoners talking too and their experiences and their stories, which was really cool. And it's almost a hard concept to grasp, is like these prisoners are telling their own stories, things that they went through in this place that you're now walking through. It's completely abandoned, it's completely empty. It's really hard to wrap your mind around the idea that these cells were once full and these things actually happened at this place. Like, you're standing right where this shit went down. And that is so crazy to me. So Alcatraz opened as a federal prison in 1934. It was home to the toughest, most dangerous, and most famous prisoners. I'm going to show you guys footage of the photo panels that there were. I'm not going to go into too many stories about those. During the audio tour, on the parts where you were looking at the photo panel, a lot of it was just the prisoners themselves speaking, saying their name, saying their number, or the officer speaking, basically just introducing themselves. One thing I did want to share from the prisoner panel is that the prisoners talked about how they weren't a person, they weren't a human, they were just a number. The officers didn't know their names, they were just another number to them. So the first stop for arriving prisoners was Broadway. They said they would be walking down this block completely naked, with the prisoners just screaming and shouting from inside their cells. When they finally arrived at their cell, they got a copy of the rules and regulation, they got their bed, and then they got their uniform. Their towel had to be folded nicely on their shelf, they got a toothbrush, tooth powder, and they each got a pack of cigarettes, whether they smoked or not, and they were able to smoke in their cells and in the library. The cells themselves were about 5 feet wide, 9 feet long, and 7 feet high. When we physically went into the cells, it was the craziest thing. They are so tiny. And thinking about myself compared to like a man, I'm about 5'6", 5'7", I weigh 110 pounds, and that to me it was like nothing. You had no space, you had obviously no privacy, but just thinking about that being your home for the next X amount of years, it's so fucking scary. And it's weird too because we almost started to empathize with the prisoners, and we had to pull ourselves out of that because we're like, they're here for a reason. These are the world's most dangerous criminals who got sent here. But at the same time, some things just seem so inhumane that you almost like don't care what these people did, but you also care. I don't really know. But it was a completely different experience being told about this stuff and seeing it versus actually getting to walk into it and being in that room, seeing what they saw and being in this confined area that they had to be in, I mean, a majority of their life. One thing that I thought was really crazy is when you went into isolation, the D block, the cells were some of the biggest and nicest cells at Alcatraz. The prisoners who stayed there did say that they were cold and damp, and you could hear and feel the wind coming in through the windows, but the cells themselves were so big, so much bigger, and we could walk into these ones as well. And seeing the difference between them, you would think that being sent to isolation, you would be punished. There were 42 cells in D block, and this is where the unruly and violent prisoners were sent. They spent 24 hours a day in their cell. They were only allowed out once a week for shower and exercise. I made a joke while I was there, and I'm like, damn, they let them shower more than I do. But I'm kidding, I promise I shower every day. I just don't wash my hair that often. D block was home to a lot of famous criminals such as Robert Stroud, also known as the Birdman of Alcatraz. He was a convicted murderer, and he's been cited as one of the most notorious criminals in the United States. Once you kept walking, you got to the solitary confinement, the hole. This really freaked all of us out, and we went into the cell a couple different times. One of the officers said that when the prisoners were in these cells, they were supposed to leave the lights on for them, but they never did. So these men were basically locked in this dark box for 24 hours a day. One of the men said that while he was in solitary confinement, he would pop the buttons off of his overalls, and he would play this game where he would throw the button, and he would spin himself in a circle, and then he would get on his hands and knees and try to find the button. And once he found it, he would get up and he would repeat it over and over again. Another man said that if you close your eyes, after a little bit of time, you could see a light. And if you focus hard enough, with that light, you could almost do anything. You could watch TV, or you could travel somewhere new. You could see different things. And thinking about these men just standing in there and being so desperate for anything, that they would just sit there and close their eyes and pray that they were somewhere else, that shit really got me. Today, solitary confinement is widely used in American prisons and jails, sometimes for long periods. An estimated 61,000 people are currently held in solitary confinement in the US. I don't remember if I got footage of any of this because I haven't gone over everything that I filmed, but I do have pictures on my phone of some of the men who were sent to solitary, and some of the reasons, I mean, they blow my mind. James Harrington was sent to solitary for possession of contraband clothing in his cell. He basically had a blue denim jacket and tennis shoes in his cell, and he got sent to solitary confinement. William Brents was sent for refusing to work. He was cutting hair for the inmates, and he didn't want to cut hair anymore, so he got sent to solitary. I know that it was a different time back then, and it was probably more than what was stated on the paper. Thinking about just being like, no, I don't want to do that anymore, and then being sent to this dark hole for God knows how long. Holy shit. After you walked through D block, there was the library, where basically prisoners could request books and magazines on a library card, and if it was available, they would put it in the shelves for them. And then as we came up through CD Street towards the recreation yard, they told one of my favorite stories from the tour. In May of 1946, Barry Coy tried to escape with 5 accomplices. It was known as the bloodiest escape attempt in Alcatraz history. Above the door to the recreation yard is the gun gallery, 2 hallways covered in metal bars. Guns were never carried on the floor, they were only carried in this gallery. Barry had an accomplice distract the officer in the gun gallery while he overpowered the officer on the floor. Coy had made a homemade bar spreader, and he climbed up the west face of the gun gallery with the spreader around his neck. He squeezed his way into the gallery, grabbed the officer's gun and keys, and dropped them down to his accomplices on the floor. They had planned to use the recreation door, but none of the keys would work. The officers outside of the prison were completely unaware of what was going on, and 8 guards walked in to be confronted by armed convicts. The guards ended up being locked and captured in cells, killed one by one. This next part came to be known as the Battle of Alcatraz. The warden called in the U.S. Marines to help control the situation, and for 2 days they bombarded the cell house. Walking into the cutoff, you could see where grenades had exploded onto the floor, and you could see the holes where they were thrown in from the roof. Once they entered after the 2 days, it was found that 2 officers and 3 prisoners were dead, and 2 other prisoners were later executed for their roles in the escape. Despite all of that, most days at Alcatraz were pretty uneventful. I think this was probably one of my favorite parts. I don't know if the decorations were real. I don't know if they're actually from the cells or actually from the prisoners. It was really cool to see the cells decorated, especially in all these different ways. It again puts you back in that place where you realize that people really were here. This really was home for a lot of people. One of the prisoners spoke about New Year's and how every year the yacht club hosted a party. And if the wind was blowing just right towards the island, you could actually hear almost everything going on at the party. You could hear people laughing, you could hear girls laughing, you could hear people talking, you could hear the music. I'm almost positive it was at this point that Kayla had tears in her eyes. She was like, I don't know why, but that part really got me. Just think about being locked on this rock, and a mile away from you, people are living their lives in this free world. And one thing I'll get to at the very end, but one of the guys talked about how everything just moves so quickly outside of the prison. And it's crazy because they don't experience that. It's just so much to comprehend for them because their whole life is here in these cells. Next up, we got to see the visitation center. And one of the prisoners told a story about how his family had said that he was dead to them. They hadn't even even told his sister that he was sent to Alcatraz, they just told her that he died. And so one day they told him that he had a visitor, and he was surprised because he had never received a visitor before. And so he walks up and he says that immediately when he sees her, he could recognize her. And during the tour itself, you actually get to hear her speak and you get to hear him speak, which again is why I really recommend doing the tour, because I can't sit here and recite everything to you. Like, I'm honestly just telling you the bare minimum right now. This was probably one of the most in-depth and most interesting tours that I've ever been on. Next, we went on to the administration wing, also known as the officers' country. Many of the officers actually lived on the islands with their families, their wives, their kids. One of the girls who grew up on the island said that you could hear the prisoners yelling every night, and her mom would always tell them that it was just the prisoners letting off steam. They had grocery stores, bowling alleys. It was like their own little world, their own little town on this island. Walking outside was probably my least favorite part of all of this because it was incredibly windy and incredibly cold. The island was supposed to be escape-proof given the temperature and the tide. But on June 12th of 1962, 3 men had escaped. All of the officers rushed into the control room where they got their assignments. Everything was laid out for them and kept in a safe. While the officers were doing their count for the inmates on Michigan Avenue, the officer got to an inmate who wouldn't get up. Frank Lee Morris and 2 of his accomplices had enlarged vent openings with stolen spoons. They found 13 spoon handles and a ladle handle found hidden after the escape. The men dug back into the utility corridor and they climbed up the pipes to the roof. They worked for over a year to get to the roof, and they were able to escape the most secure prison in the country. The men were never seen again, and they still don't know what happened to them. As we walked back down Broadway, they told us to imagine it at night. Lights off at 9:30, completely dark. Dead quiet, minus the noises that the prisoners made in their sleep. As you headed further down Broadway, this is where black people were separated from white people. They were the only group segregated. They had a high population of hostile rednecks and a very low population of African Americans. Into the dining hall, 3 times a day, all of the men got 20-minute meals. That's 200 men, all equipped with a knife, fork, and spoon all in one place. They said it was the most dangerous place in the entire prison. There were canisters of tear gas lining the ceilings. The prisoners called it the gas chamber. But in the entire history of Alcatraz, they were never tripped. In the kitchen, you can see a knife board where all of the knives were outlined in black. This way the guards could tell if any of the knives were missing. Even with this in place, 3 or 4 men were still killed with kitchenware. The food was palatable and healthy, and the guards actually ate the same food as the prisoners did. Over 1,500 men served time on the Rock, and after so many years, the buildings began to deteriorate. It's becoming too expensive to maintain. Alcatraz officially closed March 21st of 1963, and here you can see the last prisoners walking down the cell block to leave the prison. That morning, they ate breakfast, showered, got shackled, and they got onto boats to escape hell into heaven. And this is what I was saying before. One of the men said that once they got onto the island, they just saw all of these people whose lives were never paused. People driving in their cars, even people walking down the street. They all had a destination, a place that they were going to. And they didn't have that. They didn't have anything. He said everything was moving so fast and they were scared to death. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I know it's a lot different than the videos I usually make. This has been something that I wanted to do for a very long time. It's something that I'm very weirdly passionate about. I want to be able to visit haunted locations and abandoned locations like this more often and hopefully make more videos like this. If you have any suggestions for how I can make these videos better, let me know, because honestly, I'm just winging it right now. And for the 10th time, I highly recommend this tour. You guys will learn so much and hear so many amazing stories. There's actually one of the prisoners there. He wrote a book and he was there signing books, which was so cool. Kayla was like, I want to hug him. She's like, he's so cute and innocent. And I'm like, this man was literally a prisoner. What do you mean innocent? But anyways, I'm gonna go. I love you guys. I will see you in the next one. Bye.
I thought you said we're going to Applejack. I was like,
We're going to Applebee's.
so Wendy's. Wait, this is a Wendy's.
Hi guys, welcome back to Courtney's video.
Please be aware that there are
Hey, y'all.
dangers.
Alright guys, here's the scary story of the day. Once upon a time, 3 girls went to Alcatraz and they never came back.
Bum, bum, bum.